So we are on the record in ERD case number CR 2018-01960 with an EEOC case number of 26G 2018-01255C. I'm Administrative Law Judge Stephanie Brown. It is Friday, January 21st, 2022 at approximately 1:10 p.m. We're here for the third day of hearing involving these parties. And I should actually put on the record who the parties are, Willie Michelle versus Associated Bank. And as I was saying, we're here for the third day of hearing matter. It's again a hearing on the issue of probable cause. Mr. Michelle, you are again appearing. You're going to be representing yourself again today. Is that correct?
Yes.
And for the respondent who is here again for the record, please.
So Attorney Warren Bullocks, counsel for respondent, and we have Mary Connaughton, who is a witness for respondent.
All right. And we had a little bit of a discussion off the record about issues relating to events that occurred prior to September 16th of 2017. But I think we've kind of squared that away at this point as to what is going to be anything occurring prior to September 16, 2017, I will not be able to make a decision on, or at least finding relating to whether or not there's probable cause of discrimination, but the parties to some extent might have presented evidence of events occurring prior to that date during the first 2 days of hearing. And I did instruct Attorney Bullocks that if he wanted to, he could elicit some information from Ms. Coddington about events, particularly the promotions that occurred prior to September 16th of 2017. But again, it would just be more to help me with background information because based on the preliminary determination that was issued and then the decision on that appeal of the preliminary determination, those discrete events occurring prior to that date have all been dismissed. So I'm not going to be able to issue a finding relating to anything occurring prior to that date. I think that covers what we discussed off the record. The respondent is still in its case in chief. And so the next witness for the respondent is Mary Coddington. I don't believe there's anything else that we needed to discuss before we started with her testimony. So Ms. Coddington, I did swear you in previous to today when you initially testified. I think it was the second day of hearing back in November that you testified. So I just want to remind you that you're still under oath to tell the truth. All right, and then Attorney Bullocks, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start with your questioning of the witness.
Okay, Ms. Connaughton, we're going to start at the top. Can you let us know whether or not you're currently employed?
I am.
Okay. And who are you employed by and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Associated Bank as a senior HR advisor.
Okay. And how long have you held this role as a senior HR advisor?
7 years.
Okay. And how long have you worked at Associated Bank altogether?
33 years.
And prior to being a senior HR advisor, what was your role?
My role prior to that was an HR business partner.
Okay. And outside of being an HR business partner, have you held any other HR related roles in or at Associated Bank?
I have. I
Okay.
was an HR manager and I also had the title of employee-employer relations specialist and administrative officer,
Okay.
which included
And
HR.
okay. And approximately how long have you been in the HR role?
32 years.
Mm. What, Ms. Connaughton, are your key responsibilities as a senior HR advisor?
My responsibilities really include working with either a colleague themselves or with a leader if there are clarifications or issue resolution needed, could be involving policies, the work environment, performance management. I partner with them to either develop communication strategies, work through performance management process. It might be documentation, disciplinary actions, and or terminations.
Okay. And are you involved in decisions to terminate colleagues?
I'm involved, yes.
Okay. And are you involved in termination decisions regarding particular types of colleagues, like managers or anybody, or?
I would be involved in any termination decision that I have started, um, the case with or the involved parties with, yes.
Okay. And what would your role typically be?
My role is to really assist in either the fact gathering, um, or reviewing the facts that have been gathered, reviewing the documentation, looking at the big picture. What have we done in the past? What is our history within the organization? And then providing a recommendation to the business line as far as, okay, so here's the facts of the information, here's what we've gathered, and then allowing them to make an educated decision.
Okay. And I heard you say investigation. What role, if any, do you play in conducting internal investigations at the bank?
I typically would either partner or be the one to conduct the fact gathering. With the parties involved, it would be determining who do we interview, who's participating in those interviews, gathering that information, and then again, partnering with the leaders and the decision makers as far as next steps.
Okay. All right. And over the 6 years that you've had the responsibility of a senior HR advisor, has your responsibilities changed at all over time, or have they remained consistent?
No, it's been consistent.
Okay. And are you familiar with the bank's employment policies as they were back in 2015 through 2017?
I am,
Okay. And did the policies contain prohibitions against discrimination and harassment in the workplace between those times?
absolutely.
All right, so at this point, I want to show you respondent exhibit number 7, which is tab 7 in your binder.
Okay.
All right, so showing you what's been marked as respondent's exhibit number 7. Can you just flip through these pages and when you're done, look up?
Okay.
All right, do you know what this is?
Yes, these are policies from our handbook.
Okay, and are they true and correct copies of those policies?
Yes, they are.
All right, that were created and kept in the ordinary course of business, right?
That is correct.
All right, so let's look at the first policy. It says equal employment. What is this about in summary?
Our equal employment policy is really our commitment to our colleagues that they'll be treated fairly, equally during their employment opportunities and that they would not be discriminated against.
Okay, and then let's scroll a few pages into third page where it says harassment-free workplace
Okay.
up top. Do you see that?
Yep.
And what is this policy about?
This policy speaks to, again, and it's our commitment to our colleagues that they'll be working in a safe and positive, respectful work environment and free of harassment.
Okay. And then let's go to the next policy, which looks like retaliation-free workplace. According to the title, what is this about?
And again, this is our policy to ensure that the colleagues do have an opportunity to bring forward concerns, have their voice heard without any fear of retaliation by doing so.
And then the last page of this says investigations. What is that about?
That we will conduct investigations and that we ask that our colleagues participate in those investigations and provide transparent and truthful information.
And how, if at all, have you used these policies in your role in HR at the bank?
We do use them as references as we are, again, working through issue resolution or providing investigation summaries. We also use the policies at times to make performance management, disciplinary, and/or termination decisions.
Okay. All right. As I believe we established the last time you spoke in this case, you are familiar with the complainant, in this case, Willie Michael, correct?
I am,
Okay.
yes.
Um, how did you first become aware of who he is?
Mr. Michael had reached out to the HR Advisory Center and had raised a concern regarding his work environment.
Okay. And is he still employed by the bank?
He is not.
And do you know why he's no longer employed by the bank?
We did separate employment.
Okay. And were you involved in that decision to separate employment?
I was a participant in the decision making, yes.
Okay. And can you just briefly, in summary fashion, kind of describe what your participation is in that decision and the work up to that decision?
Yes. Again, I participated in the fact gathering of the incident as far as what had happened. So we conducted, I was involved in conducting the interviews with the colleagues involved. And as I stated previously, we gathered the facts, we looked at the big picture, looking at the history, and then provided the business line with here's the information and allowing them to make the decision.
Okay. And what was the issue, if any, that led to the decision to let Mr. Um, Michael go? In summary.
There was a continued confrontation with colleagues in the work environment.
And do you know Mr. Michael's dates of employment with the bank?
Yes, he was employed starting November 30th, 2015, and we ended employment on October 11th, 2017.
And he worked at two different locations at the bank, right?
That is correct.
A Green Bay branch?
He worked at, I believe it was the Green Bay East Festival Foods. It was an in-store branch, and then the De Pere in-store branch.
Okay. Do you know who made the decision to end Mr. Michael's employment?
And the business line did. There were multiple individuals involved in that decision.
Okay. Given your role in HR, were you aware of any performance or conduct issues with Mr. Michael before his termination?
I was.
In summary, what were those conduct issues?
They involved confrontation, unprofessional behavior, and comments that were sexual in nature.
Okay. All right. So let's talk first about issues involving Mr. Michael in 2017. And with that, let's look at respondent exhibit number 20.
Okay?
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
This is a summary that Megan, his branch manager, had provided to Willie after we had completed some fact gathering, just establishing a little bit about the information that was found during that fact gathering. And then we established expectations for going forward.
Okay. All right. So who is Megan?
Megan would have been the branch manager, Willie's manager at that time.
Okay. And this looks like it was an email from Megan to Mr. Michael on April 19, 2017. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And on this date, April 19, 2017, do you know which location Mr. Michael was working at the time?
He would have been at the De Pere location.
Okay. And looking at the very first line of this, where it says, "Thank you for taking the time to meet with Nate and I in Human Resources on Friday, April 14th." Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And did you meet with him on that day?
I did.
Okay. Um, and what did you discuss with him on that day?
We had discussed information that was provided to us by a female colleague. She was feeling uncomfortable with some text messages and some of the interactions that she was having Willie primarily outside of the work environment, and just felt that it was crossing a little bit too far into the personal side of things.
Okay. And can you explain what the comments or the conduct or the interactions were that were, at issue?
Um, there was some conversations about, I believe they went to the same gym, so there were some conversations, text messages about, going to the gym. He would also sometimes assist her to her car in the parking lot after they were done working. And then he would also make comments, compliments about her work attire, how she looked in her clothing.
Okay. And did she express discomfort with any of that?
Yeah, it was just, again, starting to get a little bit too much on the personal side.
And you looked into this issue?
We did.
Okay. And what was the outcome of your review?
We did not determine that there was any sexual harassment taking place. But again, the colleague, the female colleague, was uncomfortable. And so we had provided some coaching to Mr. Michael regarding, be aware of your conversations. Might not be perceived as how you intended, and just to keep work conversations, your interactions with this female colleague more on a work-related basis. Don't touch into the personal side of things as much.
And outside of this issue, were there any other issues that were raised about Mr. Michael that you can think of in 2017?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you recall those being?
In September of 2017, I was made aware of a confrontation that Mr. Michael had with another male colleague, and we also needed to investigate at the same time several interactions that he had with this same female colleague.
Okay. And did you investigate those two items?
We did.
Okay. At this point, I want to pull up Respondents Exhibit number 28.
Mr. Buliox,
Yes, sir.
that exhibit number, the one you just pointed here, that email, so I can reference to it.
The one we just finished
This one, yeah,
discussing, the
just
one we're
looking
about
at
to
right now.
discuss. The one we're about to look at right now, well, the one that's on the screen right now, that was exhibit number
20, I believe.
Exhibit 20. Okay, that's the
Yes.
one you have. Okay, thank you.
And now we're looking at 28, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
Judge. Okay, showing you Respondents Exhibit number 28. Do you recognize this?
I do.
Okay, and what is it?
These are my notes taken from the interview that Nate Vanden Brandon and I did with Mr. Michael.
And if you scroll through it, are they just notes that you took with your conversation with Mr. Michael, or do they include other notes as well?
No, these were notes that were taken during our interview conversation with Mr. Michael.
Okay, so the first page is a note from your interview with Mr. Michael. It looks like on September 28th,
That is correct.
2017. Okay. And were these notes taken in real time?
They were.
Okay. Meaning they were taken as you were talking to him?
That is correct.
Okay. And this was about the two items that you just testified about, the confrontation with a colleague and some more issues with the female colleague.
Yes, I believe the first part of the conversation was the interaction with the male colleague, and then we got into the interactions with the female colleague.
Okay. Turning to the second page of this exhibit. So it says R087 at the bottom. Is this a continuation from your notes from the first page?
It is.
And then turning to the third page. Is this still a continuation from your notes from the first page?
It is.
And then let's turn to the very next page. What is this?
Additional notes from our conversation.
Okay. And this is still your conversation with Mr. Michael?
That is correct.
Okay. And do you see where it says, right above the line on the page,
Mhm.
it says, I just wanted to stop, final one. Do you see that?
I do.
Was that a comment that Mr. Michael made to you?
Yes, when he was speaking with Nate and I, he had stated, I just wanted to stop.
And what was he talking about?
He wanted Chris to stop interfering in his conversations with customers.
Okay. And is Chris a person that he worked with at the peer?
Yes, he would be.
Okay. And did he indicate that he was being harassed in any way on the basis of his race or his national origin at this point?
No,
Did you have any reason to suspect that he was being targeted because of his race or his national origin at this point?
no, I do not.
Let's turn to the very next page. And is this still a continuation of your notes from your talk with Mr. Michael?
It is.
Okay, all right. Now let's go to the very next page. At the bottom of this page is base stamp R091. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And it says Sue, S-O-U up top. Is that a person?
Yes, Sue Vang would have been another peer colleague at the branch.
Okay. And what is this document?
Again, these are the interview notes that I took during the interview with Nate and with Sue.
Okay, so this document right here is your notes from a conversation you had with Sue.
That is correct.
Okay, and it has a date of 9/28/17 up top. Is this the day that you had this conversation?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and are these notes you took in real time as you
They
were
are.
talking through it? Okay.
Yep.
And I want to go down a little bit on this page. Do you see where it says satisfies a woman in bed?
Mhm.
What is that about?
Well, we were asking, so Sue had been involved in both of the two different things that we were investigating. So this comment, that satisfies a woman in bed, is a comment that Rachel had shared with Sue that Mr. Michael had made to Rachel.
Josh, I will make an objection here. It's going to be very brief here. Again, Sue is not testifying on the oath today regarding what's read here. So that's all the objection that I want. That's what I want to keep. Sue is not the one testifying on this today.
Okay.
So that's all I want to mention.
Sure, that's fine. You can continue with your questioning.
Okay. So I want to scroll down a little bit further on this page, towards the bottom. Do you see where it says Willie was yelling?
Yes.
What was this note about?
This was in regards because Sue was present. for the interaction between Chris and Willie. And so she had stated that Willie was yelling.
Okay. And can you give me a quick summary of the interaction between Chris and Willie as it was reported?
Yeah, so it started at the teller line. There was a customer that had come up. Chris had interjected into Willie's conversation. Willie took the customer in, and then after the customer had left, called Chris into the office and had conversation with him about that he was trying to take the sale. He shouldn't be interrupting him. And Chris then became uncomfortable, left the office, and Willie continued the conversation into the branch, which is where Sue could see what was taking place.
Okay. And do you know whether or not Sue's comment here that Willie was yelling was based on her personal observations?
Yes, those were her words.
All right, let's go to the next page. And do you see the note that says Willie kept talking, pretty argumentative? What is
Yes.
that note about?
Okay. This is when they came out into the branch lobby area.
Okay. And again, this is Sue's report to you?
Correct.
Okay. And then right below that, there's a note that says Chris completely ignored. What's that about?
That Chris wasn't participating in that conversation in the lobby area. He was ignoring Willie and had actually left. I believe he went to another office to remove himself from the conversation.
Okay. And based on your conversation with Sue, who was the aggressor from what was reported to you?
Willie was the aggressor to call Chris into the office and then continue the conversation out into the branch.
I want to go down a little bit further on this page. And do you see where it says, haven't seen that with other colleagues, wants to feel more superior? What are those notes about?
And Sue hadn't seen this type of interaction with other colleagues. She had observed it between Chris and Willie, and that Willie wants to feel more superior.
Same objection, okay? Just see for
Sure.
all.
Sure, that's fine. I can give you a standing objection to anything that she's talking about with regards to what Sue told her.
And Judge, just for the record, as I'm sure you probably figured, but this all goes to state of mind.
Sure.
The listener, fact on the listener. All right, so let's turn a few pages over and look at the page that has the name Rachel up top. All right. So at the bottom of this page is base stamped as R094, just for clarity in the record. What is this document right here? What are we looking at?
You are looking at my notes, again, taken during the interview with Nate Vandenbranden and myself, along with Rachel Fever, doing the fact gathering regarding the two incidents, both with the comments made to her by Willie and the interaction with Chris.
Okay. And it looks like this is dated 9/28/17. Is that when you had the conversation with Rachel?
It is.
Okay. And were these notes taken in real time as you were discussing
They were.
matters with Rachel?
Yes.
Okay. I want to go down not too far on this page. And do you see the note that says pleasure of women? And I can't make out that next word.
I think
Learns
learns what to do.
okay. And then it says we should go out on a couple of dates. What is that note about?
This was information that Rachel had provided to us, that Willie had commented to her that he knows how to pleasure a woman. He learns what to do, and that he suggested that they should go out on a couple of dates.
And then I want to go towards the bottom of the page. Do you see where it says compliments dash regular basis?
Yes,
What what's that note about?
that Willie would make compliments to Rachel on a regular basis.
All right, let's turn to the very next page. And are these still notes about your conversation with Willie? I mean, with Rachel?
They are.
Okay. And I want to go to about the middle of the page. And do you see in the margins where it says, don't talk to me, push buttons?
Hmm.
What is that note about?
So there was a separate incident that had happened a couple of weeks ago. We weren't able to pinpoint a specific date, but um, Willie and Rachel were working together. She had completed with a customer. Willie had made a comment about, why didn't you do a cross sell? Rachel wasn't in a good mood, and she'd been frustrated with him and just felt that that was a button that he pushed, and so she used curse words at him that day.
Okay. And then there's also a note right next to this that says Willie telling me what to do. Do you see that?
Oh, yes,
Okay. And what's that note about?
that Willie was providing, the work direction as far as, you know, asking her, why didn't you do the cross sell? Well, that's, telling me what to do that she didn't feel was appropriate.
Okay. Was Mr. Michael her boss?
He was not.
Was he a supervisor?
He was not.
Was he a team lead?
He was not.
Let's go over to the very next page. Okay, up top, it looks like it's dated for 9/29/17. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, what is this? What are we looking at?
These are the notes taken when Nate and I met with Chris Morris.
Okay. And Chris is the person that you discussed earlier, had the interaction
With
with.
Willie.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. I want to, no, actually, before I go there, were these notes taken in real time during your conversation with Chris?
They were.
Okay. And I want to direct your attention to almost middle of the page where it says, cost him the sale, didn't stop talking to my customers. What is that note about?
That was the reason that Willie had pulled Chris into the office, that he felt that he cost him the sale, and he told Chris to stop talking to his customers.
Okay. And then I want to go down a little bit further. It says reiterated several times. What is that note about?
That Willie was reiterating several times, stop interrupting my customers. You cost me the sale.
And then the note underneath that says lost control, started to shake really bad, PTSD, PSD. Do you see that?
Yeah.
What's that about?
Chris felt that the conversation was getting escalated. He felt that he might start to lose his cool, and he was starting to shake because of a previous medical condition that he has. And so he was aware of the kind of the warning signs. And so that's where he pushed the door open and left the conversation.
Okay. And it goes down further and says, feels like I was going to lose it. Is that related to that stress
Correct.
that you were just describing he conveyed to you? Okay.
Yeah.
And then it says very agitated, threatening manner. Who was he referring to, himself or to Mr. Michael or somebody else?
He was referring to Mr. Michael.
All right, let's go to the next page. And again, these are still your notes from your conversation with Chris. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So going, I think the third note on here says Willie can't speak to his customers, territorial. Uh, what is that note about?
Chris had commented that he had spoken to Chris in the past that he can't speak to his customers, feeling that Willie was territorial.
Okay. And then it says, right beneath that, pulled aside and lectured me. You see that?
Mhm.
Okay. What was that about?
That in the past, Willie would pull Chris aside and lecture him. And so then this was kind of, another incident that you are doing this again. And that's where he got called into the office.
Okay. And I see a note on this in the margins. It says 3 to 5 times. Is that how many times?
Yeah,
According
that's
to
what,
Chris.
yes, that's what Chris had shared, that he felt that was the number of times that that had occurred.
Okay. And was Mr. Michael Chris's supervisor?
He was not.
Okay. And then there's a note a few lines down that says tries to act like AM. What is an AM?
Assistant manager.
Okay. And was Mr. Michael an assistant manager at that time?
He was not.
Okay. And is this Chris saying that Mr. Michael tried to act like an AM or somebody else was trying to act like an AM?
Mr. Michael was acting like an AM.
All right. So let's go a few pages over to the document that has a base stamp at the bottom of R099.
Okay.
Okay, what is this document right here?
This was just a note that I had written down to make sure that I had included the 2016 hostile work environment um, investigation that was done with a meeting with Nate Vanden Branden, Jeff Schofield, uh, Jane Rowling from our legal team, and Nicole Gerke,
Okay,
HR business partner.
and the issue that was brought up in 2016 was hostile work environment?
Yes, by Mr. Michael.
Okay, and was there anything related to race or national origin in
No,
connection with those concerns?
no, there was not.
So based on your investigation of these September 2017 incidents, what was your ultimate takeaway?
That Willie had initiated the conversation between Chris and Willie, and that it became escalated. And instead of stopping the conversation, it did continue into the branch lobby. And based upon that continuation, Willie had been coached previously about if there were issues with other colleagues, to not address it, but to bring it to the manager's attention to let them address.
Okay. All right. So let's at this point turn to Respondents Exhibit number 25. You got it? All right. So do you recognize this document?
I do.
It looks like there's 2 emails. Is that correct?
Yes, there are 2 emails.
Okay, the first email is an email, the email at the top of the page is an email from Nate Van Brandon to several people, including yourself, dated October 11th, 2017. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the email right below that is an email from you to several people, including Nate, dated the previous day, October 10th, 2017. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So let's look at the email on the top first, the October 11th, uh, 2017 email, um, briefly. So who is Jeffrey Schofield?
Jeffrey Schofield would be the market executive of the Green Bay market. He would have been Nate Van Brandon's manager.
Okay. And who is Nate Van Brandon to Mr. Michael at the time?
Nate Van Brandon would have been the market manager responsible for the branches that Willie was working in.
Okay. And I see another name on here, Nicole Gerke. Who is that?
Paul Gerke was the HR business partner supporting the business line.
Okay, so it looks like Nate sent this to Nicole, you, and Jeff, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And looking at where he says back in January, we had a similar situation as to what we're dealing with at the pier. Why did Nate send you and Jeff and Nicole this email about what happened with Mr. Michael back in January of 2016?
Jeff and Nicole were meeting with Mr. Michael that day on the 11th to talk about everything that had happened. So they wanted to have a little bit of the history. And so Nate was providing information about an incident that had occurred at the Green Bay branch, again, where there was some confrontation that had taken place with Willie and several colleagues.
Okay. All right. And it looks like he provides that background in some bulleted points in this email. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding.
Okay. And is what he provides here consistent with your recollection of what happened or your understanding of what happened back in January of 2016?
Yes, I would say that that was consistent with the information that Willie had provided to me, along with the information that Nate had provided to me at that time.
Okay, all right. So now let's look at your email to Nate and Jeff and Nicole the previous day on October 10th, which is the second email um, in this document. What was this about?
Again, just providing some of the timeline, the history of interactions that we were involved with from an HR perspective with Mr. Michael.
Okay. In this timeline that you provided, it says Willie timeline. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
And looking at, I guess the second item on this timeline, it says January 2016 work environment issue. Nate will explain brief detail. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And is that what Nate described in the email that we were just discussing?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the second entry here says February 2016, Willie files complaint regarding harassment. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And was this after the issue had been reported about him?
I guess
Or
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, I can rephrase the question. Was his complaint after work environment issues that were brought up in January 2016?
Yes, it
Okay.
was.
Okay. And again, that had nothing to do with race, harassment or discrimination or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
All right. So after the timeline, it looks like you have a section that says summary of what happened in September 2017. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, is this an accurate summary of your understanding of what happened in September 2017 involving Mr. Michael?
Yes. This would be the information that we gathered from the interviews from the colleagues, in particular, the interview with Mr. Michael.
Okay. And was there a decision at that time about what would happen, if anything, with Mr. Michael's employment after your and Nate's emails in October?
There was additional conversations, but no, there was not a decision made, as a result of this email.
Okay. And after these emails, so after October 11th, what was the next thing that happened with Mr. Michael in terms of his employment at the bank?
He then met with Mr. Schofield and Miss Gerke, and then we reconvened, and then they made their decision at that point, and then we communicated the decision.
Okay, and what was the decision?
The decision was made to separate employment.
Okay. At this point, I want to show you respondent exhibit number 4. Hmm. Okay, do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is this document?
This document is the written summary of the verbal conversation that Nate and I had with Mr. Michael on October 11th, where we separated employment.
Okay. And it looks like this is a letter dated October 13th, 2017. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. And if you turn to the second page of this document, is that your signature at the bottom of the page?
It is.
Okay. So you sent this letter out?
I did.
All right. I just want to touch on just a few things in this letter. First, staying on the same page. Do you see where you write in the first, I guess, paragraph, the end, it says, your behaviors are considered unprofessional and disrespectful and will not be tolerated in the workplace. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And what was this in reference to specifically?
It really was in reference to the continued behaviors that we had been experiencing with Willie throughout his employment. And so his behaviors were considered unprofessional, disrespectful. We did not identify, or the pattern was continuing. And so we felt we needed to separate employment.
Okay. And when you say continuing, what do you mean by that?
Well, when we look at the previous work environment complaints that had been received, they were received by multiple colleagues, expressed concerns about their interactions with Mr. Michael, and he was the common denominator in all of those interactions.
And did all of these colleagues work at the same branch as Mr. Michael who expressed frustrations with him?
They did not.
Okay, so colleagues from different branches
So they were,
expressed about Mr. Michael.
yes, they were colleagues that he worked with at the branch at that time, but he worked at 2 different branches throughout his employment with Associated Bank.
Okay, all right. So now I want to turn to the first page of this exhibit. And I want to look at the, I guess the second paragraph here. And do you see where it says we had several conversations and coachings with you over the last year regarding appropriate conversations with colleagues within the workplace? Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Are you aware of any additional conversations or conversations that were held with Mr. Michael about his exchanges with colleagues in the workplace?
Yes. So as Nate and I were gathering information, Nate had made me aware of several communications that Megan had had with Mr. Michael regarding um, several emails that he had sent out to the team. I know one was in April of 2017, kind of talking about, these were good behaviors, these were bad behaviors. Megan had coached him, please don't send out these kinds of emails. Allow me to, bring your concerns to me, allow me to coach the teams on that. And then there was an email that was sent out actually on September 26th, um, that again, Willie had sent out an email to the colleagues in the branch indicating that it wasn't appropriate for them to interrupt the conversations with customers.
Okay.
And again, Megan coached him on that, I believe, the next day.
Okay. All right. And it looks like in this letter, you do give a specific example as well of something happening on April 19, 2017.
That is correct.
Okay. And what was this about?
Again, this was that email recap. So we considered this documented conversation versus just coaching with Mr. Michael regarding appropriate behaviors, appropriate conversations within the work environment. And that kind of goes along with the same theme of he was coached back in 2016 also about those behaviors.
Okay. And this April 19, 2017 reference, is that in reference to a female colleague who had complained about sexually charged um, comments or conduct by Mr. Michael?
Yes, it is.
Okay. But, as you indicated earlier, the bank was unable to substantiate those comments, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but it still counseled him on appropriate conversations, communications with colleagues. Am I getting that right?
We couldn't substantiate sexual harassment, but there were, again, conversations taking place that made the female colleague uncomfortable, and we just asked him to, step it back and, be more professional, keep your conversations at a professional level versus getting into the personal side.
Okay, okay. And then I want to go down a little bit further in this letter, and one, two, three, four paragraphs down. Um, kind of in the middle of the paragraph, it says, because we needed to continue the investigation, you were placed on paid suspension. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And was he in fact placed on paid suspension?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Did he lose any money as a result of being placed on suspension?
He did not.
Okay. And what about any PTO time?
No, he was paid his PTO time.
Okay. Was the decision to let Mr. Michael go based on his color,
No,
his race, or his national origin?
no,
Okay. Any other complaints he had made to the bank previous to his termination?
no,
Okay. Was Megan involved at all in the decision to terminate?
she was not.
Now, prior to 2017, you had the occasion, as you testified earlier, to interact with Mr. Michael, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I think you said the first time was when he filed internal complaint. Did I hear that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Um, and can you kind of explain what the complaint was about in summary?
Yeah. In his complaint, Willie was indicating that he was having difficulties working at the branch, in particular with two colleagues. Um, and he identified it as harassment. He walked me through incidents of interactions that he had with the colleagues. And after we walked, through all of his concerns, I then conducted the rest of the investigation. I spoke with Mr. Vanden Branden, reviewed his coaching notes, things that he had addressed, and I also interviewed the other colleagues within the branch.
And this was in 2016?
That was in 2016.
Okay. And did you communicate your investigation results, if any, to
I,
Mr. Michael?
I did. I
Okay.
communicated verbally to him, I believe on the 29th of February, and then I followed it up in writing to him.
And just so that we're clear, did any issue that was brought up in connection with this internal complaint related to race or color or national origin?
No.
Okay. At this point, I want to show you respondent exhibit number 18. Okay, do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is the email that Mr. Michael sent to the advisory center.
Okay, what is the advisory center?
The advisory center is the department or area that I work in. And so there are several of us in the advisory center. And again, we have a shared email box. So as things are coming in, the advisor that is available to take that will pick up and start the case, or make the contact with the colleague.
Okay. And you said this was an email from Mr. Michael to the advisory center. It looks like it was dated February 5th, 2016. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And what was this about?
This is where he was expressing concerns about his work environment.
And is this the concerns that you just spoke to earlier about you investigating?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And it looks like if you look at the second paragraph of this email, he's complaining about, quote, unfair and even dishonest practices towards me, end quote. Do you see that?
In his email?
Yeah, in his email. Yeah. The second paragraph, last couple of words.
Oh, yes, a lot of unfair and even dishonest practices. Yes, I do see that.
All right. All right. So let's turn to the very next page. In this exhibit, what are we looking at here?
This is an email that Mr. Michael had received. It was sent by Barb McDonald and was sent from Kyle Paulson's computer. But Barb is making Mr. Michael aware of an opportunity to purchase career apparel and get a free logo and free shipping.
Okay. And did Mr. Michael attach this to his email to the advisory center on February 5th, 2016?
He did.
Okay. And did Mr. Michael indicate at any point that he believed that this was an example of the unfair treatment that he was receiving?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And do you know why he believes that this is evidence of unfair treatment?
I believe he felt it was inappropriate for Barb to be sending the email from Kyle's computer.
Okay. And do you think that this is unfair treatment?
I do not.
Do you believe that it's harassing treatment?
I do not.
Do you believe that it's a dishonest practice against him?
I do not.
Okay. All right, turning to the very next page of this document. And it looks like this goes on for a few pages, 5 pages, I think. What is this here?
This was the attachment or the summary of concerns that Mr. Michael had provided to me.
All right, and did you read through this at the time?
I did.
Okay, and was there anything in here related to race?
There was not.
Okay, and was there anything in here related to color or national origin?
There was not.
Okay, was there anything related to any colleagues ripping a shirt off of Mr. Michael?
No, there was not.